Now, Nigerians head to the polls next month in the face of declining crude oil prices that have generated macroeconomic headwinds threatening growth of Africa's largest economy. To fully understand the issues and put this in perspective, I'm joined now by Oge Modie, MD and CEO of NOIPolls, GODFREY ADIBE editor, African Renaissance and senior lecturer at Nasarawa State University, and Charles Robertson. He's global chief economist at RENCAP, and he joins us from London. And I want to begin with Abuja, where we've got Oge, who is MD of NOIPolls. And Oge, the question I want to put to you is, give us the state of play in terms of the main candidates. We now know who is standing on behalf of the PDP. We also now know who's standing on behalf of the ACP.
INEC has put forward about 11 candidates, and of course you've called the two main parties which most Nigerians know. So yes, you have the APC candidate, you have the PDP, you have the PDM, and they're different, like 11. You have the COA party. So you have quite a number of of candidates that are on the voting on the ballot paper for February 14th, 2015 elections.
And in terms of the perceptions of those main candidates, and you're right, I am sidelining the other candidates, and I shouldn't be. We should be including them in this and make them part of the overall voice. Just in terms of the perceptions that you have been finding in the polls that you have been running in 2014, give us your main findings in terms of what we can expect around general popularity and some of the issues that are going to be decided in this election.
Okay, so I think the first thing is, we had asked, Nigerians are looking forward to elections in February, and overwhelmingly we had about 9 and 10 saying yes. What other thing we had looked at were how many of those 9 and 10 were registered, and it came up to about 88. However, we now want to determine how many are actually eligible to vote, and that will be talking about the PVC, which is a permanent voter's card that each voter must have to be able to go to the polls come February. And so today we're conducting a poll that would ask, if you are registered to vote, which is about roughly between 82 to 88% of those that we have spoken to, how many of you do have the PVCs, have the TVCs, or don't even have any at all, and what could be the issue for not having or being eligible to vote come 2015. But the perception is that a lot of people are eager and looking forward to going to vote. But again, what will be able to allow them actually be able to vote will be to have the PVC, which we'll be finding out by today.
Let me ask this question to you still. In terms of the numbers that you're seeing in terms of popularity, are you able to give us any kind of indication who is likely to be, who is indicated as being probably the winner if elections were held now? Okay,
so that will be a pre-election poll, which we've already started today. So I could give you that result by next week. However, we did what we call a viability. So in terms of popularity, in terms of people who they know as candidates, so you would have the popularity of course, the incumbent president. You have a high popularity rating for Buhari. You have a high one again for Fashola, and then you have a high popularity rating for Okorocha. So that's what we did last month, looking at the viability, which was looking at popularity, and then again what people thought of what kind of opinions they had of them. So you do have, of course, the ones that are running now. They are very popular. Jonathan was about 99%, and Buhari was about 92% in terms of popularity. But in terms of who would they vote for come February, like I said, well, doing all of that that's starting from today. And we'll be able to release those results towards the end of the month.
We shall certainly be coming to you looking for those results. Therefore, let me come to you. When you hear those numbers that Oge is talking about, do they correlate to some of the main issues that we think, or at least the media has been debating, as likely to determine the outcome of the election? We know that security is going to be a big issue in these elections. We know that the economy is going to be a big issue in these elections. Of course, joblessness is always one of those factors that you talk about when you talk about elections on the continent. What do you make of those?
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to believe that what Oge was talking about was just name recognition rather than popularity as per you know, who wins if elections were to be conducted today. I want to believe, you know, given our own situation in this country, the key driving thing will still be the fault lines of religion and regionalism. The new element in it is that there has been a reinvention of Buhari in the last 2 weeks or so, and it remains to be seen how that impacts on the election. Before now, you know, though Buhari had run 3 times, his messages always seem to be tailored to his own supporters in the Muslim North. So what has changed significantly is that the APC has provided him a broader platform. Now he goes and is seen, you know, with various regional leaders. He even changed his own sartorial, you know, dressing mode. He now dresses in the garb of various ethnic groups, something he never did before. And I saw him in Port Harcourt during the flag off of his own campaign. You know, in the 2011 presidential debates, with all due respect, in my own opinion, he performed very poorly. In fact, came last, in my own opinion. But seeing him speak in Port Harcourt, it was more of an orator. So, and in some websites, there were even photographs of Buhari in suits. I never knew I would see Buhari in suits. These, in my own opinion, are clever political marketing that we are geared towards changing the perception of Buhari as a sort of northern irredentist or Islamic fundamentalist, as some people label him. And we remain to see how that will change the dynamics of the elections.
So you're certainly painting the picture of what potentially could be a very exciting election. I mean, what we've been hearing, at least the commentary around what these elections potentially could produce, is that we could have the closest election since the military handed over power in 1999. Let's go to London. Charles, I want to understand from you, from a foreign investor perspective, what are foreign investors looking at in terms of the outcome of this overall election? What do they want to see, number one? Number two, are there any concerns around some of the policies that have been articulated by the main political parties as issues that they will address should they be given power to run Africa's largest economy?
Good questions. The first and most important thing the investors are waiting for is to see how an incoming government or a re-elected government handles the collapse in the oil price. That the Nigerian budget is being cut, needs to be cut probably further given where the oil price is today. There's pressure on the currency. Markets are suggesting that needs to be weaker than where it is today. I mean, I would characterize this as one of those elections you want to lose. With the oil price down as low as it is right now, this is going to be a very tough time for anyone who wins this election. And the markets are recognizing that, and I think that's why asset prices have been under such pressure. So firstly, they want to see how the candidate, the new president, and how his team reacts to the oil price. Secondly, then you've got 2 different issues. If Jonathan is the victor, again, it becomes the budget, but at least the markets are somewhat reassured in terms of stability, on the assumption that Okonjo-Iweala stays in place, central bank governor stays in place. If Buhari wins, then you've got the anti-corruption campaign story, which has not worked out in China quite as well as people might have hoped. I mean, arguably it's contributed to the slowdown in the Chinese economy. Chinese officials don't want to make a decision when they don't have a luxury watch to help them make that decision. So the corruption issue has not worked out exactly as people would have expected in China, and how that campaign would work out in Nigeria is also going to be questioned by investors.
So we know that foreign investors do know Jonathan. They've had him for the past number of years. Of course, they've also seen General Buhari in previous elections. Are there any issues around some of the issues that Judeo raised around the continuing viability of the Nigerian state? He raised the whole issue around the north-south fault lines, and then also, of course, the whole issue around security.
Yes, in that regard, markets might see some, might hope that the problems with the north, with Boko Haram, some of the underlying issues of discontent might be a different agenda if there was a northern president. Or indeed, maybe if Jonathan gets re-elected, he has got a full 4 years ahead of him and this becomes a key focus. Either way, this needs to be addressed because it's becoming it's a growing problem, and we've seen that pick up for years now.
Therefore, let me come to you in Abuja. In terms of some of the main issues that this election is going to address, we have spoken about security. We have spoken about the issue that potentially you could have this South-North divide. But if you were to characterize the competitiveness of this election, what would you say?
In terms of how competitive it's going to be?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be one of the most competitive presidential elections we've had in this country since 1999. The first thing is that prior to this time, the oppositions had always been very fragmented. And so the PDP has always, the outcome will always be known, you know, ahead of the time. Despite the fact that it's part of the Nigerian political culture that, so to say, that losers will always dispute. What has happened now is that the APC, the main opposition party, has a strong base in the Northwest, which has some 18 million voters, in the Northeast about 11 million, and then in the Southwest, which has about 13.5 million voters. So the crucial question now is, before, Jonathan, I think Buhari won 13 of the states, of the 19 northern states in 2011, and he had never before won any state in the South. So what has happened now is that there are chances are he will do very well in the Southwest, which we believe will be the battleground. He may be able to get, if he doesn't win, Rivers State is likely to get 25% of the votes in Rivers, probably in Imo State, because of the presence of Governor Mechi and Okorocha. So for the first time, he's getting a southern reach, and that makes it extremely competitive. At the same time, the PDP is entering the election in a weaker position than it was in 2011. Weaker in the sense, that there has been this movement away from, some governors are defected. The anti-Jonathan sentiment is very strong in the north, so that even in the core northern states where you have PDP, you know, like Jigawa and others, you are not very sure that even if they vote for the PDP in the governorship, that they will want to vote for the president. At the same time, there is also another dynamic. We do not know. The critical elites in the north have never been very supportive of Buhari's candidacy, you know, and will they support Buhari this time around? We do not know. Will the people in the Southwest, are they likely to vote for APC in the presidential election because of Tinubu and others, or will they have their own independent mind? How will religion and regionalism interface in this contest? These are the imponderables we do not know. What we can say for sure is that things are different. PDP will have a tough battle in its hand. And what will be the role of the power of incumbency in all this? This remains to be seen, in my own opinion.
So religion and regionalism certainly going to play a role in terms of determining who gets the mandate to rule Africa's largest economy. But we're certainly hoping that the other economic issues that Nigerians are dealing with on a daily basis are also important factors in determining the outcome of these elections. Our conversation continues on the other side. I am talking to Oge Modie, Managing Director of NOIPolls, GODFREY, ADIBE, Editor, African Renaissance, and Senior Lecturer at Nasarawa State University. And in London, we've got Charles Robertson, is Global Chief Economist at REGIONALISM. We are discussing Nigeria's upcoming presidential and governorship elections. And I've got in the studio with me my guest, Oge Modie, CEO of NOIPolls, GODFREY, ADIBE, Editor, African Renaissance. And in London, we've got Charles Robertson, Global Chief Economist at RENCAP. I want to begin with you, Oge, and ask if you have been able, in your polls, to get any kind of sense or any kind of consistency in terms of some of the top issues for Nigerians as they go into these elections. What are they looking forward to be resolved, and what do they want addressed?
Okay. We have about 3 top issues that need to be addressed. We've been checking this for about 7 years now. So we have a 7-year trend that shows one of the top issues, power. Now, security crept in sometime in 2012 because of the issue, the insurgency in the north. And then the issue about job creation, and then you have the issue about food security, and then corruption. So, but the top 3 issues then are power, security, and job creation. So those are the things that Nigerians are looking to see. Although one thing they've also said is that, you know, they haven't heard much from the campaigns that are surrounding this issue. So they're saying that they believe that the campaigns, all the presidential campaigns, should focus on these key issues because they're very important to Nigerians. The issue with power, you know, because we've been rating power for about 24 months, is that, you know, we can only rate that 4 in 10 Nigerian households, you know, can only see some measure of improvement in power. The remaining 6 in 10 are saying that power has gone worse or is not different or has, you know, hasn't changed much. So power remains a huge issue that is on the, you know, on the burner for any presidential candidate to address in his campaign. Another key issue is the security also,
Yeah, so Oge, given those issues and the fact that you say these are top of mind in most Nigerians' minds, how do those issues then, how does that correlate with the perceived recognition of the candidates? Because I would imagine it must be damaging for President Goodluck Jonathan, because he is the one who's presiding over security. He is the one who has initiated these power reforms that have yet to deliver consistent power to Nigerians.
Yeah, so what we've done, I mean, being that he is the commander in charge now, we also rate him according to those different issues. So we have like what is called the transformation agenda that has about 8 to 9 different issues, and consistently for about 2 years, out of 5, he's been ranked poorly in both power and security. So I mean, that's what we can then use to measure in terms of what Nigerians are sensing roundabout performance on these issues. But for other candidates, I think what Nigerians are looking to see is how they address this in their campaign. So how are you going to deal with the power issue? How are you going to deal with security? How are you going to deal with creating jobs for the youth unemployed, for the youth unemployment rate? Yes. So I think that for them, it's what they are looking to see. So like more of issue-based campaigns versus, you know, the back and forth we're having in the papers about who says what and who's not saying what. And that's what Nigerians are looking to see.
Yeah. Charles, let me come to you. I want to understand from you what the markets are pricing in terms of the outcome of these elections. I mean, I saw a note from RENCAP earlier today suggesting that you guys think there will be a devaluation that's coming up. But in terms of risk, the risk perception around Nigeria, what are the markets pricing in here? Is there any doomsday scenario in play?
No. All the markets are focusing on is the oil price. The elections, in any normal year, they would be focusing on these elections. They would be trying to weigh up the respective candidates and make a judgment call as to which will be better for the markets. But today it is all about the oil price. We've seen such a staggering and unforecast fall in oil in the last 6 months that everyone's having to just rip up their forecasts and start again. We'll be putting out a piece in a week or so about what does Nigeria look like with $40 oil or $60 oil or $80 oil. So it's all about oil, and yet the issues that you've already raised in this discussion are what would normally be capturing attention. So electricity, you know, the gains that have come in the last few years, probably from the successful delivery of the Obasanjo electricity reforms from back in kind of 05, 06, 07 time. Jonathan's delivery actually probably comes more in the second period, 2015 to 2019, when the electricity privatization story starts to deliver investment and then better power output to households. And that, we shouldn't be expecting it today. We should be expecting that to start to feed through over the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah. Charles, before I leave you, are there any policies pronounced by the main parties that are worrying foreign investors around economic policy, around some of the reforms that they are proposing to the electorate?
I haven't seen anything yet which has worried me more than the oil price. When I do, we will be writing notes about it, if I do. But hopefully policymakers stay sensible enough to not worry the markets any more than they already are.
Okay, all right. Therefore, let me come to you, and I want us to talk a little bit about the correlation between what the polls that have been conducted by NOI are showing and the views of ordinary Nigerians in terms of the leaders that they are likely to vote for. Do you see any kind of linkage between the issues and the popularity perceptions that we've seen so far?
I'm not sure. Opinion polls are still relatively new in the country.
Yeah.
And I would want to wait until they conduct their exit polls, and then we'll know. But what I can see is that 4 weeks, I think they still have about 4 weeks to the election. That's like a lifetime in politics. In the last 2 weeks alone, there has been this big, reinvention of one of the candidates, which I mentioned, and we want to see the impact, because the impact of that reinvention, if that perception of Buhari, changes, and he's able to get just even 20% of the votes in the South, then the outcome might be different. He's never been able to do well at all in the South, and the labeling of him, we thought it was going to be a problem, even in all analysis, and this is changing, and we don't know what will happen. I don't know. I mean, the polls, I don't know the time they conducted the polls, so it's still the things are changing, the trends, and at the same time, I heard about a report which was conducted, when Buhari was chairman of the PTDF, Petroleum Trust Fund, which is going to be released. What we do know that is in the nature of the game, there will be strong attempts to define and redefine the candidates. And in the end, we also have to look how many people are really independent in this. How many are the non-committed voters? The impression I have is that many Nigerians have already, about 60% in my own rough estimate, have made up their minds. And the driving force, we can talk about security. If you, for example, pick security and use it as a campaign issue, it can go either way. Supporters of regime of Jonathan will say, well, this is an example that the president concerted efforts by some politicians from the north to hold the president to ransom. And they can still argue that despite the security measures, the rate of foreign direct investment under his regime is far more than what you had under Obasanjo. The rebasing of the economy made Nigeria's economy the largest. On the other hand, if you go to the people from the other side, they use the security that this has been prolonged, the kidnap of the Chibok girls. So what I'm saying is that every issue you mention is relative. Even if you bring the issue of performance, those who are on the other side can focus on the unemployment, focus on several poor power generation, as Oge mentioned. On the other hand, supporters will pick on the fact that, the economy has been growing by over 6%, despite security challenges. So everything seems to be very relative, and where you stand in the political divide.
And under his term, of course, Nigeria has become Africa's biggest economy. But I've got two other issues that I need to quickly talk about before we leave our conversation. Number one, because we keep referencing to 1999. Why? Because that's when the military handed over to civilians for rule. But we make reference to that military because we know this is Nigeria, and Nigeria, for a large part of independence, has been ruled by the military. Is there a risk of a military coup in this election, number one? Number two, in terms of the credibility of the elections, are there any issues in your mind? Well, we don't want to believe there will be a risk of military coup, but we have to watch. We expect that if Buhari loses the election, there will be post-election violence in the north among his supporters. If Jonathan loses, there is a very high risk of a resurgence of Niger militancy in the Niger Delta. If the election becomes stalemated for a very long time, that is when we have to look at military adventurists and hope they do not interfere. But if it gets stalemated for a prolonged period, we hope it doesn't come to that. The good thing that it seems to be happening is that there is an impression that despite the noise, that our democracies are maturing. Increasingly, the sore loser syndrome that has been part of Nigerian democracy seems to be waning. People now who lose the election, you saw it in Ekiti, are now gallantly conceding defeat. You saw it even with the APC presidential nominations, where people thought that the losers were going to quit. People stayed together. So let's believe that this is a sign of maturation, and that the voters themselves are getting tired and will not want to support a prolonged contention over who won or who didn't win.
That is the hope we can count on. But the fact is that we still have to take measures. We have to take measures to make sure that the process is apparent, transparent, and that trouble spots, volatile areas, security agencies are, there are security measures to make sure that post-election violence do not erupt, and that the international community should also take, stronger interest in it, so that if there is a prolonged stalemate, they will be able to intervene and help in resolving the conflict.
Absolutely, and help us ensure that Africa's largest economy remains democratic. So we look forward to the upcoming elections. That's our program for today. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I want to thank my guests, Oge Modie, CEO of NOIPolls, and also GODFREY ADIBE, editor, African Renaissance, and senior lecturer at Nasarawa University. He also contributes to the Brookings Institution, and Charles Robertson, Global Chief Economist at REIN.